To date, because I prepared this 2 years ago, so apologies. I'm sure
just
it doesn't. Yeah. So Dr. Salman Abu is a Palestinian researcher and writes about Palestinian refugees and Palestinian right to return to Palestine. He's a refugee himself, and he was born in Beersheba or Beersheba, a British mandate to Palestine. He is the author of over 300 articles and papers, several books on refugees, Nakba and right to return, including two important atlases, the Atlas of Palestine 1948 that was published in 2005 and the Atlas of Palestine that was published in 2010. And I believe copies of those are in the library because they were donated to the library by Dr. Salman himself. He spent 40 years digging for any details of information about or related to Palestine before, during, and after the creation of Israel. His self-imposed mission has encompassed not only documenting a Nakba, but also ensuring that the memories and identities of the occupation of the occupied homeland are never lost, in his own words. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Salman to tell you more about Israel and more about the history of Palestine.
Thank you, Dr. Shafi. Thank you, Anas and Jumana, for arranging this. And thank you all for being here, inviting me third time, so there must be something I said which made you come again. I hope you will not be disappointed. One of the things I like about people who come is that they come for a purpose. They come for a purpose. The purpose is they have a sense of justice, they have a sense of humanity, and they would like to know more about it because their conscience is free and they are not burdened with bias or by other impediment of thinking. So when I talk about Palestine, I'm a selfish person because I talk about my rights. You come, most of you come because you believe that justice must be removed and the remedy must be made. And therefore I thank you for this sentiment. Let me first establish some key parameters for my talk. First of all, let me make assumptions. Let me assume that you are not for colonialism. That is, foreign soldiers attack another country, enslave its people, and rob their natural resources. They don't kill people or expel them on a large scale. They just rob them. I also take it you are against racism, and racism, of course, is some people designate themselves as being superior to others and treat them accordingly, especially if they have the power to do so. I also take it you are against military occupation, in which heavily armed soldiers attack another people, usually defenseless people, and control them by force. Let me add one more. I also take it you are against ethnic cleansing, in which a group of people, heavily armed, attack defenseless people because they have a different religion, or a different nationality, or even just simply they covet their land and property and they want to take it. I also take it you are against aggression. Aggression, of course, means that you conquer another country by force, which is inadmissible by international law. There is a very clear statement in international law to be against that. All these evils, I hope you are against, are already enshrined in an ageless moral code. And 60 years ago, they are enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They are also, of course, described in the Geneva Convention. Consequently, if you agree with that, then you support Rome Statute of 1998, which is the foundation for the International Criminal Court. designed to bring to justice criminals who committed war crimes. Let me add one more principle. It's very subjective and something people can have different views about. I am not against diplomacy or private beliefs. You are quite free to believe in Greek gods. You are also free to have your own religious beliefs, to think of the universe, how it's created, think of what to eat, not to eat, think of where to pray and how to pray. These are private convictions. But I hope you agree with me that these convictions are not and will never be part of international law. International law doesn't accept that as basis of international law. Now, if you agree to these principles, then we have something to talk about tonight. Because I'm not going to argue about the virtues of these principles. They should be taken for granted. What I'm presenting today are some relevant facts which would probably help you to make a decision as to whether there is a crime and whether the criminal should be punished and the robber should return his stolen goods. I would like to make my talk in two parts. One part is to define if there is a crime, what's the nature of this crime. And the second part is how to remedy this situation. We always talk about victims, but we should go one step ahead and say, what can we do to remove that injustice? In my case is very simple. They took away my home by force, at gunpoint, and I want it back. That's simple. They prevented me from returning to my home, it's another crime, for 64 years. I'm counting them. To be precise, I was not allowed to sleep in my bed for 23,670 nights. If you are away from your home for a week or two by force, it's too much. I have been away 23,670 nights. I'm not a politician. I have never been, but I have a case which became a cause for 11 million Palestinians and probably many more millions of the good people around the world who support justice. Therefore, my talk today is to present some facts which I hope you can come to the right conclusions, provided you adhere to the principles I just outlined. If you don't, I don't know, then you are wasting your time. If you do, maybe there's something you can say about this. So, my country, my homeland, which one? Yes, this one? Okay. Double arrow? Okay, this is it, Palestine. This is what Al-Nakba found when he conquered Palestine in October 1917. As you can see, it's rich coastal area, hinterland, mountainous hinterland, which is cultivated heavily, and River Jordan, and the Dead Sea, which is known for being the lowest point on Earth. Now, you have to remember the significance of these events. At that time when Al-Nakba occupied Palestine, Europe had found that the colonialism, the age of colonialism is over. And they started rolling back their soldiers from Asia and Africa and going back to Europe. At this very moment, Balfour created a new colonial project under a new name. Balfour, Foreign Minister of Britain, as you know, introduced a new colonial project under a new name, and he betrayed, I quote, the sacred trust of civilization, which is in the Charter of the League of Nations in which the mandate of Palestine was based. He betrayed that. And what was that mandate? To create a democratic and free country in Palestine for its people. But instead, Balfour conspired with rich European Jews to facilitate their entry into Palestine. And of course, this declaration is, in today's language, a false promissory note by a party which doesn't own to a second party which doesn't have title, without the knowledge and, of course, the consent of the natural and the majority inhabitants of the country. And that started 100 years of death and destruction in Palestine, indeed in the region. But in its 30 years of British mandate, which was supposed, as I said, to bring Palestine into an independent and free country, the British policy did the opposite. It allowed European Jewish immigrants to Palestine. But in spite of that, and all this, it was not possible for the Jewish immigrants to acquire more than 7% of Palestine. Then Britain put the problem on the United Nations, the problem to the United Nations, and under pressure from the United States, a resolution was approved to give 54% of the country to the new immigrants and less than half to the inhabitants of the country. But of course, Ben Gurion wasn't happy about that, so we actually occupied by force 78% of Palestine. The dark blue areas are the areas taking over and above the partition plan. Let me just say in a few words, partition plan is a mere suggestion. If you have a quarrel, somebody says, you know, give your house, half your house to somebody or not, this is not valid legally unless you agree to give away your home to somebody else. And if you don't agree, then that suggestion is not valid. But the problem about this is that very soon the United States itself discovered that the partition plan was a big mistake. Why did they say so? Because at this very moment in Czechoslovakia, there has been a new communist influence, and they did not want Palestine to be another communist state. Why? Because all these immigrants, or many of them anyway, of Russian origin, of East European origin, and many of them were communist, and therefore they were afraid that there would be a new communist state in Palestine. And that's why, actually, the Soviet Union hastened to recognize Israel. And even the United Nations, they found that you cannot impose upon the people of the country to give away half of their country. And so they said, they reneged on that position, and they wanted to put Palestine again under UN trusteeship, not British trusteeship, but under UN trusteeship. Of course, Ben Gurion was mad about these developments, and he wanted to take advantage of the situation before the international community changed their mind. And so, what he did was to occupy Palestine. This is the part of Palestine he occupied until the state was declared. When the state was declared, he occupied only 13% of Palestine. But this has great significance, and I'm going to explain why. And after the state was declared, in the following 6 months, he occupied the rest in 31 military operations, and each operation had at least 2 massacres of villages in that period to remove the people. In other words, the ethnic cleansing operation has started. I would like to concentrate on only 6 weeks of this period, which will help you to decide your tomorrow's headlines in the newspaper. These 6 weeks will determine the situation which you are going to read about tomorrow morning. What are these 6 weeks? From the 1st of April, 1948, till the declaration of the state, 14th of May 1948, let us see what the Zionists have done in Palestine. Remember that by now the partition plan is no more accepted internationally because people did not accept it, and they found it's quite dangerous. And at the same time, the British will leave Palestine on the 15th of May. So Ben Gurion has 6 weeks to act. He was ready for that. Already his soldiers, which were trained and armed, there were 120,000 soldiers, led by army officers. Many of them are veterans from Second World War. They are really well armed. I mean, I'm saying they started by being 65,000 in the beginning, and they ended up by 120,000 in the end of 1948. But they were prepared, and they are led by professional veteran officers, and they had arms, and they had tanks, started by being simple tanks and big tanks. Then they had Air Force, and they had wireless, and they had Central Command, and nothing of this was with the Palestinians. They lived in 1,000 villages, and when there is danger to the village, maybe 2,000 people from the village, young men, find old rifles from the Ottoman time, and they stand in the border of the village to defend it. Of course, it is not a very successful operation, but that's the extent of the balance of power between the two parties. It's not only that. I would like to give you a detail of the 6 weeks. Let me say again, if you understand that, you'll read the newspapers more intelligently tomorrow morning. In the 6 weeks, the red areas are occupied by the Jewish forces. Let me explain why I say sometimes Jews or Israelis or Zionists. Until 15th of May, all the British literature and laws and so on talked about the Arabs of Palestine as Arabs and talked about Jewish immigrants as Jews. So when you look at the literature, this is Jews and Arabs. In the second half of 1948, Israel was established, and the people would call them Israelis. In both periods, they were Zionist soldiers. So this is the way to understand these terms. Now, Ben Gurion forces occupy the red areas, as you can see. And the blue circles are villages his forces depopulated. 220 villages were depopulated in the 6 weeks. Before the state was established, before the British left Palestine. Of course, their duty was to protect the people. Half of the massacres, about 35 massacres, took place in this period. I made a detailed analysis, day by day, week by week, in this period. And I found, you can see actually the massacres, drops of blood here somewhere, but 220 villages depopulated, they constituted half of the total refugees of Palestine today. Half of them. They were removed from their homes before the state was established, before the British left were supposed to protect them, and before any regular Arab soldier came to rescue those Palestinians. In fact, why did they come, the Arab soldiers? Very, very reluctantly, because there were many demonstrations, as you see today in Arab capitals, when there were massacres in Deir Yassin and other places, and the Arab governments were forced to come to the rescue of Palestinians. They came after 15th of May, and they failed to rescue what's left of Palestine. But let us just keep thinking of the period before the state was established. So here you have a well-organized army occupying parts of Palestine in the red areas, and before the British left, the British did not come to the protection of Palestinians in this case. Although the massacre of Deir Yassin can be seen from the window of the British police chief in Jerusalem. They did not. So, why did Ben Gurion do that? Because if he accepted the partition plan, in this area I'm showing you, half of the population would be still Palestinian. And he did not want that. He wanted to be pure Jews. And therefore, the ethnic cleansing was put into action from this moment. I want this piece of land, but I don't want Palestinians to be there. the answer is to get them out, expel them. How to expel them? By massacres. You can see I made here black line circles. What are these circles? In every military operation of 31 I mentioned, the soldiers came and committed 1 or 2 massacres and then told the people in the other villages, if you don't leave, this will be your fate. And therefore, I created what I call circle of influence. And the villages which are depopulated within a circle are a result of the massacres in that circle. So you can see there are so many circles here. And actually, this is the central part of Palestine. The Galilee is actually the same situation. The red areas are occupied by the Israelis, or like let's call them the clans, and before the state was established, and before the British left, and before any Arab soldier came to Palestine. This is Al-Nakba, and this is ethnic cleansing. So when people tell you that little David, the Jewish David, has fought gallantly against the Goliath, Arab Goliath, it's a big lie, it's a patent lie, repeated all over the time, all over. It's absolute lie. And when they tell you, we accepted the partition plan, but the Arabs did not, first of all, nobody will give away half of his home to a stranger. Secondly, the Jewish immigrants were able only to control under the British mandate 7%. Why give them 54% of Palestine? That's why nobody in his right mind would give away half his home to recent immigrants who came in the night from a smuggler ship on the shores of Palestine. Now, the massacres were a weapon of ethnic cleansing. This village here is called Bureir village. It's just northwest of Gaza Strip today. And this photo is from the Royal Air Force, taken in 1945 of the village. Let us tell you how a typical village was attacked. This pattern was all over, has been used over and over again. The village usually was attacked from 3 sides, leaving the one side open so that the survivors of the massacre would leave. In this case, to the north, the green line. This village Bureir was attacked by artillery from the east, was blocked, the road blocked from the south, and the tanks came from the west. They threw grenades in the houses when father and mother and children were huddled in the house, and they were killed, of course. And then they set the village ablaze, and it was ablaze to a large extent because these are farmers and they have lots of hay, and then the village was ablaze. About 200 people were killed in that, and the rest, the survivors, went up north. This massacre took place 48 hours before Ben Gurion stand at the podium in Tel Aviv and say, I hereby declare the state of Israel. You have to see the significance of this event. What happened, of course, people were expelled, women and children. Usually women and children, the soldiers took their jewelry and they let them go to the nearest Arab area. And a massacre took place in the village, typical villages. I list 365 war crimes, but the accepted number of massacres is about 70. Half of them when the British were there, and the other half was after that. And so, when some people were killed, like this one, this is Tantura on the coast, on the Mediterranean. They took people to dig their graves, and they shot them, and they fell in the graves. Very well-known story about Tantura. Now, the others were taken away for detention. After the survivors, after anywhere from 20 to 200 people were killed, they were taken to detention centers. These are the people of Ramla, big town in the center. In the background, the police station. As you can see, most of the people who are detained are normal civilian people. They are not soldiers. And it was Ramadan, and it was July. It was very hot. So they were pleading for a drink of water. They allowed children to bring them a drink of water. Then they were taken to, this is one person I met in San Francisco. His name is Darwish. He was at the time 14. And he told me, as a boy, he was also taken into detention. In other words, anywhere from 12, 14 to above that, they were taken to detention. What kind of detention they went to? They went to, taken to forced labor camps. Forced labor camps. Did you hear that expression before? I'm sure you did. You heard it in Germany, Japan, forced labor camps, where people are taken to do hard work with a crumpled piece of bread, and many will die, and anyone try to not to work, they will be shot. Forced labor camps in Palestine by Jews, only 3 years after they were closed in Germany. Amazing. I discovered this in Geneva in the Red Cross files. And not only that, I'll tell you more about this. I found that the officers who were running these forced labor camps were German Jews with the name Schneider and so on and so forth. We have the names, I can give you the names. I have 500 documents from the Red Cross to explain, to tell you that. The Red Cross did something. You see, a soldier being captured, he is not allowed by the capturing army to work for the military effort of the enemy. But he is allowed, or is allowed in Geneva Conventions, to work for civil works. But the civilians are not allowed to be detained at all, let alone to be put into hard work, forced labor work. In the Red Cross files, 85% of people whom they found are Palestinian farmers, and the rest are soldiers. Very quickly, the soldiers were exchanged under the Red Cross, and who remained? The Palestinian farmers from the depopulated villages. The five red dots are the camps which were visited by the Red Cross. But I made an interview of about 2 to 3 dozen people who actually been through this experience. And I found something else to my surprise. I found there were 17 other forced labor camps not visited by the Red Cross. And these are the red dots here. So, therefore, ethnic cleansing is a pattern, and it has been used all over again. This is what we call Al-Nakba. Here you have, before all this happened, Palestinians in about 1,000 counting villages, the red dots. Then the Nakba came, ethnic cleansing. It was empty of its people. Empty. Empty. Only a few villages up in the north. And where are